Marijuana, the dried leaves and flowers of the Indian hempweed, is used in the form of a cigarette. Marijuana smoking, experts point out, can make a helpless addict of its victim within weeks, causing physical and moral ruin and death.
Excuse me for a moment while I vent about the mind-boggling stupidity of the autocratic, bureaucratic, right-wing, Neanderthal numbskulls who keep pushing an insane, inane, and inhumane holy war against marijuana, which is, after all, a weed. The most embarrassing thing for these holy warriors is that the weed is winning. They've been at this war since 1937, spending billions and billions of our tax dollars, militarizing our borders, and stomping on our Bill of Rights. They've used phone taps, garbage searches, jackbooted raids, and draconian prison terms to do what? To nab peaceful, mellow tokers who aren't bothering anyone, that's what. Despite 60 years of spending our money, they failed. 85% of Americans say marijuana is easy to obtain today. A third of our population says they've tried it. Nearly 15 million people partake of it at least monthly, and more high school students now smoke marijuana than cigarettes. Meanwhile, the holy warriors have become more fanatical and thuggish. A marijuana arrest is made every 41 seconds in America, 9 out of 10 of them for mere possession. In 2004, 772,000 Americans were arrested on marijuana charges, more than for all violent crimes combined. And 40,000 Americans are in prison today for this victimless crime, more than the entire prison populations of 8 European countries. Even sicker, the sanctimonious weed warriors have made it a crime for thousands of seriously sick people to get the medical benefits of using small amounts of doctor-prescribed marijuana. Weirdly, our doctors can prescribe cocaine for patients, but not marijuana.
Things aren't always the way they seem. We have an opinion about something, but don't really know if it's true. Take, for example, the controversial plant hemp. It could be a billion-dollar industry, producing everything from dynamite to cellophane. But what happened? Back in the early 1900s, 2 very wealthy industrialists, DuPont and William Randolph Hearst, wanted to protect their fortune. You see, they were in the paper and chemical industry. And guess what? Hemp can be used to make all of those things, everything from cement to alternative fuels. They petitioned and had people believe that hemp was actually its evil twin, marijuana. They may look identical, but completely different chemical makeup. In fact, hemp virtually became demonized overnight. And it wasn't until 1998 that the Canadian government finally allowed the commercial growing of hemp once again. You know, if we let it, hemp could even help save the planet. It absorbs huge amounts of carbon dioxide, reducing greenhouse gases and producing pure oxygen. So whether it's rope, paper, or even a T-shirt, we can do almost anything with hemp.
My name is Jack Herr. I'm co-founder of Help End Marijuana Prohibition. In 1973, Captain Ed Adair, who owned a countercultural store, Grateful Dead-like store in the San Fernando Valley, became my mentor. And we learned that from kids that would hang around there that marijuana was also known as a plant called hemp. And I thought, well, that was interesting. One night, Captain Ed and I stumbled upon an idea that hemp was the #1 source of paper, fiber, fuel, food on Earth of the 3 million plants. Forget smoking it. That historically, this plant had been known since time immemorial as man's #1 plant. All the paper. I never knew paper had been made from marijuana, been made from the plant called hemp. I never knew that virtually all clothing, all bed sheets, all homespun, that famous American homespun was all marijuana. 85–90% wasn't wool, wasn't cotton, wasn't jute or sisal or flax. It was hemp, marijuana. And all this has been kept out of my education. I went to public school, high school, and into college. I was a major in history. And I had never known that marijuana had ever been used for anything, let alone 85% of everything, for the last 10,000 years, right up until this century, and was the #1 thing known by kids 100 years ago that went to school. I use a dictionary, an encyclopedia, and the United States Government Department of Agriculture, because it's all there. More was written about cannabis, hemp, than all the other plants that we had, wheat and corn and barley and rice. More was written about hemp. Hemp was that important. It was virtually all our clothing. There are no known deaths from marijuana. You live longer, according to the Jamaican study, Costa Rican study, funded by the United States government, and American studies, all done from the 1960s and early 70s, before they cut it off in 75. We live longer, the people that smoke pot, every day than people that don't do drugs at all. And 8 to 24 years longer than people that use alcohol and tobacco. You got to be out of your mind not to smoke pot once you know that information, and you got to be really mad at the government that's kept this information from you. Marijuana has some strange effects on people, but the worst of them that I know is you get the munchies, and you might put on some weight. I mean, nobody's dying from marijuana except the people that are shot by the government, shot by the politicians, giving police orders, and crazy parents who think that they're doing God's will by listening to these politicians without any documentation and proof that this is a dangerous drug. The #1 contributor to the Partnership for a Drug-Free America is Budweiser, the largest beer company in America, and then followed by other beer companies and the pharmaceutical companies that want to keep the synthetics on the market. They want to keep those toxic medicines on the market. Henry Ford, in 1941, built an automobile completely out of hemp, and the windows and the body and every part of it except the engine out of hemp. He predicted that all cars be made this way. It had 10 times the impact strength of steel. It was the finest plastic. Of course, hemp has the longest molecule. Hemp isn't just another plant. What I said before is it's greater than all the other plants that grow on Earth combined for paper, fiber, fuel, and it's the only one that grows it without pesticide or herbicide. You've got to be insane not to put this information into your children's minds, because to put any other information is you damning your children, you condemning your children to a life that's going to bring death for them and their children. The government's a liar. So this is not new. You can go into the encyclopedia, you can go into the dictionary, and you can go into the history of all the plants and come up with the greatest plant and the healthiest thing for the human race, and that's hemp, marijuana.
What's up? It's me, your pal, Peace Bud. Today I would like to introduce to you the future of renewable energy sources for America and the planet. My friend, the cannabis plant. A great deal of propaganda has been created to slander this totally beneficial plant. But did you know that the evolution of human society has depended on this wonderful plant for centuries? Cannabis hemp has been used throughout history to make fabrics, rope, and paper. It is completely renewable, easy to propagate, and it produces high yields in almost any environment. Cannabis is the only plant that can support the energy needs of our economy. Did you know that our cars were originally intended to run on a cannabis-based fuel source called ethanol? Henry Ford's original Model T was built from plastics made out of hemp. The vehicle was to run on a hemp-based ethanol fuel, which was grown on Mr. Ford's property. He figured hemp would completely take care of his newly emerging automobile industry. But as the Industrial Revolution grew, and new chemicals and mechanical processes became possible, other industries stepped in to dictate what the new resource for the 20th century would be. The Rockefellers worked hard to establish relationships with Middle Eastern oil monarchies, smudging the dream of ethanol. Combined with the DuPont's new chemical processes to create plastics from oil, paper from wood, and a new type of synthetic rope called nylon. And in 1938, by request of big oil companies such as the DuPonts and the Rockefellers, cannabis was outlawed in the United States. We now live in the outcome of the Industrial Revolution, and our machines have become reliant on oil. Now we have to reconfigure our world, or slip into darkness. Oil is an economy based on death. Its pursuit has caused nothing but wars and inequities, for the oil industry harvests the ancient remains of dead animals, while a fuel economy based on growing cannabis is one of life and creation. The situation our world is in because of oil is absurd. Join me in the new revolution of the 21st century. Legalize cannabis and create a new era of peace, prosperity, and renewable energy.
This is what people need to realize. The only reason why it's illegal is because of economics. It's because there's like 1,000 different things that marijuana would fix that pharmaceutical drugs right now are prescribed for. And it would cost the pharmaceutical companies billions and billions of dollars every year. If marijuana was made illegal, it would cost alcohol companies. When you see those commercials, like those, the talking dog, the pot commercial.
Yeah.
I wish you wouldn't smoke weed. Those are sponsored by Partnership for a Drug-Free America. Partnership for a Drug-Free America is funded by alcohol companies. I mean, it's hilarious.
Really?
Yeah, and alcohol's a drug.
Yeah.
But it's a drug that's sanctioned.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you ever meet someone they're like, I don't do drugs. Meanwhile, they're smoking and they have a beer in their hand.
Yeah.
What are you doing right now, douche?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, just because it has a label and a barcode and you can scan it doesn't mean it's not